Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Gardener. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So in today's video we are going to be talking about different type of stretch. Now when we talk about stretching, it's basically when the succulent does not tend to get a lot of light, and that's when the succulent starts to stretch. Now guys, the moment your succulent is going to start to stretch, it is going to lose almost all of its beauty. Being even the color is going to get faded off. It will no longer have that vibrant color. Apart from that, the shape, the symmetrical shape of the succulent will also get disturbed, and it will not look very appealing, because the reason why we tend to purchase succulents is because of their beautiful color, their vibrant color. Apart from them, when they tend to stay very compact, they look absolutely beautiful, and that is the reason why we tend to purchase it. So in this video, we'll be talking about what are the different type of stretches that you might experience in case if you do not get a lot of light. Now remember, there is a different process of stretching for each succulent. It's not that all of the succulents are going to stretch in the same way, depending upon how much of light you get. Now, even if you are getting indirect bright light, let's say that you get indirect bright light, but if the light is not enough, your succulent is going to have a different type of stretch. Now that stretch looks somewhat like this. Now this is not completely stretched right now. It was earlier. Now I have kept it in morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours after acclimating it. But because it is very cloudy, that's why it is not recovering very fast. But if there was a good amount of sun, it would have definitely recovered. But so far, almost 50 to 60% it has recovered. So what exactly was going on with this succulent? As you can see, the upper leaves are pointing upwards and the lower leaves are pointing downwards. Now this case of stretching happens when the succulent has a good amount of indirect bright light, but it is not enough for the succulent. Probably there is indirect bright light only for a couple of hours. As we have spoken about this earlier as well, the indirect bright light should be at least for 8 to 9 hours, because indirect bright light does not have a lot of intensity what direct morning sunlight has. Direct morning sunlight, even for 5 to 6 hours, is absolutely fine, after which there has to be indirect bright light. But let's say that your succulent is placed in a location where it only gets indirect bright light, there is no direct sunlight, only indirect bright light, and even that indirect bright light is limited to only a couple of hours. Now during that time, what's going to happen is there is a good amount of light, but that light is not enough for your succulent. So what the succulent starts to do is, the lower section of the leaves will start to bend downwards like this, as you can see over here. The lower leaves will start to bend downwards and the upper leaves will start to go upwards, trying to expose the stem so that the succulent can get enough light. Now I'm not very sure why the succulent tends to do this, but this is one of the process of lack of light. Now this is not because of complete lack of light, because if it was complete lack of light, the succulent would have started to grow more towards the vertical side. But over here there is light, but that's not enough for the succulent. The succulent wants more light. So basically in this situation, the succulent is telling you that whatever light you are providing it, it is not enough for the succulent. It needs more light than that. That's why I had to move it to morning direct sunlight after acclimating it. It's slowly starting to recover. Now this pot was in a position wherein the morning sunlight was falling like this. That's why you can see this is recovering much faster compared to this one. This one is still, the leaves are still bending downwards, because this is where the direct sunlight does not fall in. But eventually, overall, once the sunlight tends to come in, the succulent will start to open up. It will start to have its leaves back in shape. But that again depends whenever the sun tends to come in, and whenever the succulent feels that there is a good amount of light, it will start to recover. So you can see the lower leaves are bending downwards, upper leaves are facing upwards. This is an indication that there is light, but it's not enough for the succulent. Now the second type of stretching is when the stem starts to get elongated. Now this was elongated long time back. Now I have been giving it a good amount of light. That's why you can see the succulent pups. These are the pups. This one and two are the pups. The mother plant, I lost the mother plant, so I had cut it off in between over here. So these are the two pups. So now the succulent is getting a good amount of light. That's why they are very compact. You can see the leaves are very compact. Now in this case, this is due to lack of light. In the earlier example, we said that there is light, but that's not enough. Over here, the succulent is not getting enough light at all. So what happens in this case? Now I don't have a lot of examples because my succulents are not stretching. I only had this few of them, so I can give you as an example. So let's say that this succulent was placed in a place where there is not much light. So what happens is that the succulent will start to stretch and it will stretch until it gets that light. Let's say that this succulent was kept near the window. So what's going to happen is the succulent is going to start turning like this. So it's going to get longer and longer. Let's say this is where there is sunlight. The succulent will stop stretching at that point of time because it's getting sunlight. But this portion is where there is not much light. So the succulent will start stretching. Now this again depends. Let's say that your sunlight is over here. Let's say your sunlight is over here. The succulent will keep stretching until it reaches to this point. So you can imagine what's going to happen. And all of the lower leaves will start to fall off. Over here we have pup because this is being kept in morning direct sunlight after acclimating it, so it's doing quite well. But in case if this plant was not getting any light, let's say that the sunlight was this far, then the succulent will stretch all the way till here, and it is going to look really bad. It's not how the succulent is supposed to look. And probably by the time it starts reaching to this, let's say this hand is the sunlight. So by the time it tends to reach to this place, all of the lower leaves will start to fall, and the crown area is only going to stay so small. And it is going to look pretty ugly. The stem is going to be very long. And over the period of time, the stem will definitely break. It will get dried because it cannot support that much of water all the way till the point where there is sunlight. So eventually the succulent will start having issues. Probably the stem might tend to dry out, or the roots might tend to dry out. And a lot of times the succulent will start to put out aerial roots because those roots that are present in the soil will not be able to carry that water all the way that far, and it might start to get dried. So light is the most important part for your succulents. And now after this, the third is what I'm going to put it on the screen because I don't have this stretch currently. This only happens when you have a transit or you have recently purchased a succulent. When your succulents are purchased recently, and let's say that your postage takes anywhere between 10 days or 12 days or 15 days, that is when a transit stretch will appear on your succulents. You can see it on your screen. This is how the transit stretch looks like. The crown area will be discolored. Now, there is a possibility this can also happen after you have purchased your succulents, depending upon how much of light is present. But a lot of times, or I would say 90% of times, you will notice this, especially when you purchase your succulents and the succulents have been in the box for a very long time. That is the time when you will see the transit stretch. I've already made a video on this, how to take care of transit stretched succulents. I'll put the link in the description below. You can check it out. Now, transit stretch is something that won't be very common with the already present succulents, because if the succulents are present at your place, if they lack light, they will immediately start to stretch. The crown stretching usually happens, or I would say a lot of times it will only happen after you have received the postage. If the postage was delayed, you will be able to see that. So transit stretch is something that is not very common with your existing succulents, but it is very common with your recently purchased succulents only if your transit box has been delayed for a very, very long time. So this was all about the different types of stretching. You have to understand how you can deal with it. The moment you tend to see that the leaves are pointing downwards and there is a mid section wherein the leaves are divided downwards and upwards, so you will have to provide it with the adequate amount of light. And talking about this one, we can't do much about it because the succulent is going to look like this. There won't be much of new growth on the lower leaves. So the best thing, because over here, this one, I was just propagating it for the pups. The pups have reached a decent size. I will be separating them very soon. Currently, it has been raining, so I'm not doing any cutting right now. But eventually, I will cut up these two pups and I'm going to plant them separately. So in this situation, the only thing what you can do is do a stem cutting or a beheading. You can't do much about it. Like even if you're going to put it out in a good amount of light, the growth will only be on the crown area. Unlike this one over here, the growth will be there. All of the leaves will start to come up in one uniform manner. But in this case, the lower leaves, like the lower portion over here, as you can see, this is not going to have any growth. So the only option in this is to do a stem cutting. Once you do a stem cutting, there is going to be growth on the cut area, but nothing below. Very rarely you might happen to see, if you're lucky, you might get a pup over here, but usually that does not happen majority of the case. And then we have a succulent over here. There's a little bit of dirt in between the leaves. I have to clean it off. But this is how a beautiful succulent will look, which gets a good amount of sunlight, which gets balanced watering. This is how the succulent is going to look like. As you can see, the structure of the succulent itself tells you that it's doing quite well. All the leaves are pointing upwards. The succulent is not completely closed inwards. The succulent is not completely opened outwards, which indicates that it is getting the right amount of light as well as it is getting a balanced watering. So this is how the succulent tends to look like, and this is how we expect our succulents to look like. especially after we purchase it. A lot of times the succulents do not look like this, so you have to take those necessary actions. Give it a good amount of light, give a balanced watering, and that's all about it. And you can see the succulent will definitely start to look somewhat very healthy and in a very symmetrical way. That is what the succulents are known for. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep propagating.